Okay, hello everyone. I hope you're well. So we're going to start in just over 3 minutes. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Christian Sasse. I run Sasse Photo, Sasse Media together with my team. And today we're going to have a very interesting broadcast. I'm just testing the audio. Hope you're all well. And as you can see, it's going to be a very interesting session today with Jeff Rich's new book, Bald Eagles in the Wild. So something to look forward to. So before we start, I just wanted to show you something interesting. And this goes more for the Patreon viewers, the Patreon who kindly help keep Sasse Photo alive. So what I'm doing is I'm going to broadcast, give special broadcast. I'm going to Ecuador next week and so on. And I'm going to do special broadcasts for my Patreon viewers. And if you join, I'm just telling my Patreon viewers, just Google Periscope Sasse Photo. And then by doing that, you'll get to my Periscope channel. The advantage of running things on Periscope is the following. I can specifically broadcast to a group, which I cannot do in YouTube. It doesn't allow it. I've got a lot of followers on Periscope, as you can see, over 20,000. So what you need to do is you need to get the app, okay? So you just press get the app, and then you whatever you take, whether it is an Android or an iPhone, you can then download the app and then follow me on Sasse Photo anyway, and I will follow you back, and that gives me the possibility to form a group. So just thank you very much for that quick attention. So we'll get right back now. Okay, so I hope to see you very soon. So we'll start live in a while, just over 1 minute. Hello everyone, and welcome to another great show on Friday. We have another live interview. I'll tell you about it in a moment. That's the book in the background. It's my friend Jeff Rich. He's a biologist, and he's going to join us live and tell us more about the book, and you will have the ability to win a book, and it's going to be signed by him. So we're going to get to the quiz later, and one of the special quiz moments is where you're going to dial in. He's going to give you a question, and it's going to be quite exciting anyway. So I look forward to that. It's really marvelous to see new books come out on eagles. So more about that in a moment, but I just quickly wanted to give you some updates on the news. So just give me a second. Let's see if I can just get this. Okay, give me a second. So some interesting news coming in here. Yes, the first thing I wanted to share with you quickly is this is something interesting from Lady Hawk. Came in yesterday, very educational. So this here is about the Two Harbors the Catalina, where K82 removes cracked non-viable egg and remains. That's the first news. So I'm just going to run this. It's a rather long 8-minute video. I'm just going to put it on silent, and I will tell you why it is so interesting. It's a bit sad, of course, but she writes, yesterday we noticed that one egg of the K82 laid this season had a very large crack in it. It was not a pip the egg had become damaged. So it's not that there was a hatchling, because the hatchling was overdue long time ago. Today, when K82 gets up, we see the remains of a deceased eaglet with the eggshell fragments, and she goes on to explain what the possible causes are for an eagle not, or an eaglet not to hatch. Either the egg is not fertilized, which means, yes, it's not fertilized in the oviduct, and then the other possible reasons are quite numerous when it comes to the non-viability. There are many reasons why eggs are not viable, and I encourage you to actually read the text below the video. So it could be that there are not enough nutrients in the egg. There could be problems with the incubation, with the temperature. There could be problems that the egg hasn't been turned. You know that the turning of the egg, which eagles do intuitively, hasn't happened enough, so that the membrane around the yolk got stuck to the wall of the of the shell, and so on. It could also be, and you know this was the main reason why IWS made their institute in California, the Institute of Wildlife Studies, that there has been a bacteria that has penetrated, or that could be that DDT contamination was possible, and so on, and that the eggshell, that's the fifth reason, could have been broken because the chick wasn't fully developed and wasn't strong enough. So there are many reasons for that. But what is interesting to see in this video is the behavior of the female as she, carefully puts the broken eggshells to the side or the bowl of the nest. Quite phenomenal, actually, to watch. So I'm just going to jump a little bit forward in this video so you can actually see this. So yeah, that's the moment. That's the moment where she gently takes parts of the eggshell and puts them there, and you can see how her wing is labeled as K82. That's the Institute of Wildlife Studies in California. There's this incredible good job still, although they are completely underfunded on the eagle behavior there of the islands of the Californian coast. Then we jump on something quite amusing here. This is from our friend the Osprey Mama. Look at that. So she's seen there. I just have to put this silent. 1 second. I just put this silent. So she's found a red-tailed hawk. I don't know if this is her garden fence or whatever, but it's a rather beautiful one. But that was there. She's got another one with a squirrel. I think this is not the one with a squirrel. Let me just quickly see that. 1 second, let me just go to her channel quickly. But she's got two videos. Yes, here it is. Here, that's the one I'm supposed to show you. This is really amusing. So just watch this, just 40 seconds. It's really amusing. You see a squirrel come there on the fence, and this is the type of things you can watch in your garden. And look at the hawk watching the squirrel there. I think that's a marvelous capture. Really, really marvelous. Thank you, Lady Hawk, for thank you, Osprey Mama, for that beautiful contribution of that video. I think you took this yesterday. So she just showed us 40 seconds and left it up to us to guess what happened then. Very nice. Thank you. Okay, so let's just close these windows quickly so I don't get any feedback here. And now we move on to the guest of tonight, and this is the website which has already been which has been already put into the chat. I just see a comment here from Lady Hawk. I just want to say, Christian, it could also be that the position of the eaglet was not good inside the egg. Yes, Lady Hawk, thank you for that comment. So that was on the earlier one. So Lady Hawk is with us. Thank you very much for that comment. It couldn't work its way out. Yes, sorry for not having mentioned that. You're absolutely right. So let's go to Jeffrey Rich Nature Photography. This is his webpage, and if you go to on the webpage, the home, then you come to a page and it's called Books, and this is what it's going to be about. So Bald Eagles in the Wild, a visual essay of America's national bird. I think that's very daring to come out with yet another book. Is it another book? I mean, of course, we know David Hancock has written quite a lot. So what is so new in this book? And that's what we're going to find out. I have had the pleasure yesterday of taking a lot of peek previews in this book. And let me just bring this book up quickly. There we go. That's the book. So Jeff has kindly provided me with a peek preview of this book. And I'm going to just see if I can blend in Jeff now. Wait a second. I'm just going to put my earphones on and everything. And let's see if we can get Jeff in. There we are. Hi, Jeff. How are you doing?
Hi, everybody. Doing good. Thanks, Christian. Good to talk to you.
Okay, so we have Jeff Rich live from California. Where are you actually, Jeff?
I live in Cottonwood, California.
Which is where?
It's about 2 hours south of Oregon, 2 hours north of Sacramento.
Okay, so that's Northern California, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I guess you're quite close to Kit, who you know quite well. Is that right? The same area?
Same town, basically. Yeah, about 10 miles apart from Kit.
Very nice, very nice. Well, Jeff, I think it's wonderful you could join us, and I think it's marvelous you have this new book out. But before we start with the book, just give us a little bit about the background of yourself. You are a biologist, and you have an interesting history. That goes far back before I even heard of eagles. So, can you just tell us a little bit about it? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I just kind of grew up in Northern California with a love of nature, and decided to get a degree from Humboldt State University in wildlife biology back in the early 1980s, and went on to get a biology degree in life science teaching. So I've been teaching science as well, and a master's degree within the last decade or so, a little more recently, for teaching science. And the whole time I've been photographing wildlife and nature since about the mid-1980s. Successfully is kind of when I started. And I grew up in nature and hunting and fishing and hiking and backpacking and never saw a bald eagle. It wasn't until I was in my early 20s during a college field trip to extreme Northern California that I saw my first bald eagle. And that kind of started my love affair with eagles, as well as my photography love affair with eagles. That this book's kind of been a dream since, probably the early 90s.
Well, that's quite fantastic, Rich. But tell us, very recent, you actually went to get a further degree, which absolutely amazed me. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I just thought it would be beneficial for me and my students. So it's more of a teaching degree, a master's degree in education for teaching science. And I felt that would help me with my endeavors in the classroom and also in the world of wildlife photography, leading trips, and educating people about nature and wildlife, and in this case, particularly the bald eagle.
Very good. And, let's go right back to the early 90s when you were mentioning eagles. So how was it different then when you first started, both from an equipment point of view, also from the eagle point of view, as compared to today? And by the way, I encourage my listeners, all the viewers, this is about you. It's not about me. I'm going to introduce Jeff to you. I'm going to show a few pages. I'm not going to show you the whole book. Otherwise, you're supposed to buy this book. Okay, it's a great book. So I'm not going to show you the whole book, but I'm definitely going to show you a few pages, and Jeff can discuss a few things. But I would love you to throw questions at Jeff. So please keep on doing that from now on. Nicole's going to put them here on my screen so that I can do that. So just start thinking of questions whilst Jeff is going to give us a little bit more background. So Jeff, what was different then compared to what it is now?
The photography difference was huge. The 1980s, when I started getting really serious into it, was all color slide film, and manual focus lenses. It was a whole different ball game that's evolved into what it is today. And I'd carry 100 rolls of film on the airplane to go on a week-long trip to Alaska to photograph eagles. As far as eagles go, there just weren't any in the, the state of California. I mean, the eagles were endangered and populations were plummeting in the 60s and 70s when I was a kid. So like I said, I didn't even see one in spite of all the time I spent out in the field and in nature and around Shasta Lake, which now has many nesting pairs. So the eagle difference has really changed with the comeback story. And my book is like it's a personal love affair with eagles. It's a stories of the eagle comeback and a lot of people who have helped the eagles come back and the laws that have helped that as well. It's just a lot of stories that I patched together over many years. And then I wanted to finish with some good stories and good news like the eagle comeback and how it's, now off the endangered species list, and how people and citizen scientists have really helped. People like you who are really involved with the bald eagle, maybe not biologist trained, but you're citizen science and the video work and camera work you've done to share this wonderful story that you do. So I think there's just a lot of good stories like that in the book, and people that have really contributed to that comeback story. And then kind of a little piece I like to always include in all my stories are the value of nature for the world and people and our health and our earth and those kinds of things, which are so important to me as well.
Very good, Jeff. Well, the good thing is the questions are starting to run in. So the first question is from Jackie Porter, who I know very well here on the show. Where is your favorite place to take photos?
Of eagles or anything? Yeah. My standard answer is wherever I happen to be photographing and filming at the moment is my favorite place. Back in November, when I was up in Canada and British Columbia, where I met Christian, and we got to do some filming side by side. At the moment, that was my favorite place. But that's a tough question. I've been extremely fortunate to travel to some wonderful places around the world. Bald eagles, probably my most memorable places would be up in Alaska, a number of places there, specifically Homer, Alaska. Around the world, I just came back from Ecuador a couple weeks ago, and that was my newest place that I had never visited, and just a wonderful experience down there photographing the birds down in Ecuador. So I hope that helps, Jackie. If you want to follow that up, that's fine.
In Ecuador. I'm going there in 10 days. You know that, Rich. I'm going to do, Jeff, I'm going to do hummingbirds in Ecuador in 10 days. So
yes, that's the place to go. I spent a lot of time filming hummingbirds, and you're going to do a lot of your slow-mo work down there. You'll just, it's going to be a great trip for you. They are amazingly beautiful.
That's exactly what it's going to be. Okay, next question from Maxime Wirth, who's very often on the show. Thank you, Maxime, for joining. How far back do the bald eagles go? This particular species of eagles, that's an interesting question.
Yeah. Historically, how far back do they go? I mean, there's really, I haven't found a written record of that, but I do know they're extremely important, and the stories passed down from the Native Americans. The bald eagle is, a North American bird, and the Native Americans were quite fond of them and revered them, and still do to this day. And I included some of that story in my book too. I think it's very valuable to recognize that. At the time of our country starting, and of course I'm talking about the United States of America, the founding fathers chose in 1782 the bald eagle to be our national symbol and our national bird for the entire country, the United States of America. So it's been extremely historic from that standpoint as well. And of course, even before then, there's records of many, many eagles flying around and the population's doing quite well. It wasn't until the 1900s when the declines really started in the population. So I hope that's kind of what you were asking, Maxine. If not, again, feel free to follow up.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Jeff. Next question here. Terry Green. Hi, Jeff. Do you have a favorite aspect of eagles you would like to photograph, such as in flight or hunting or parenting?
Yeah, I've been photographing bald eagles since the 1980s. And to make this book, I wanted to tell the whole story. And so I've tried to include many, many different aspects of their life history. But I'm a behavior guy. I love action. I love behavior photography and action. A behavior scientist is called an ethologist. And so I consider myself an etho photographer, sitting, for hours and day after day to capture wildlife and their behaviors. So action and behaviors. I love watching birds at their nest, and the bald eagle nesting photography that I got to do was not easy, but quite rewarding. And then when you're in areas in the winter where they group up in large populations, they really do a lot of interacting with one another, which gives some fantastic photography opportunities of interacting and acting between each other. Those kinds of things are my favorite.
Thank you, Jeff. And here's an interesting question from Glenn Hazel Woody. It's specifically for Pittsburgh. So I don't know if you can answer this, Jeff, but listen. In Pittsburgh, where eagles have been gone for over 200 years, how did our Hayes pair decide to nest here? Did they come as a couple and decide to nest here? Thank you.
Yeah, and great question, because even where I live, they weren't here. So a lot of reintroduction programs, including Pennsylvania, had some really successful reintroduction programs back in. It started kind of in the 1970s. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service started allowing various biologists to repopulate areas across the country. Pennsylvania was one of them. And through a process, I talk about it in the book a little bit more. It's a process called hacking, H-A-C-K, hack boxes. And so they'll put young eagles into an artificial nest out in nature where they monitor it and feed the young birds. And the scientists kind of hide so the eagles don't realize the people are feeding them. And then when they're ready to fledge, at fledging time, they'll open the cage and the eagles will go ahead and disperse or spread out. And it's been quite successful. So started in the 70s and 80s was quite good as well. And then today there's a great comeback of eagles. And so these birds have found each other and start nesting in these places that have great food nearby, often near water. They do like fish, but they are also, scavengers. So wherever they can find food and a good nesting territory.
Yeah, so that was a question that was a good answer. Not an easy question. So Glenn Hazel Woody just wanted to say she loves the moon, the moon crescent moonshots. So I'm just slowly scanning through your book and showing some pictures whilst you're talking. Okay, so next question, Susan North, who we know well. Susan asks, how hard is it to take photos of the eagles? That's quite a challenging question. Here you go.
Yeah, it's wildlife photography is not an easy thing. I always like to, say that once you get your camera figured out and your big lenses figured out how to use them, then you want to become as much of a biologist as you can. The more you learn about your subjects, the easier it is to find them. And then I like to go to places where they naturally occur in large numbers. Like I mentioned before, wintering. There's some wonderful places in the winter. One where, Christian and I met up in British Columbia, where there's thousands of birds in the area along the river, in the Fraser River, Northern California. Across the country now, there's a lot of great wintering spots. And so that brings them in, and that ups your chances to find them. And then special permission to get into some opportunities to photograph in a nest, which is not always easy to do, but it helps to know what you're doing when you do that and do it safely with permission.
Okay, very good. And Osprey Mama, who you just saw the video of the hawk and the squirrel.
Wasn't that fun?
It wasn't that fun. It was great, huh?
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, she's always on the show. It's fantastic.
Nice.
So she says, well, here comes the obvious question from Osprey Mama. Has Jeff taken any pics of ospreys?
That sounds like a good question from someone named Osprey Mama, for sure. I have taken pictures of osprey. Yeah, I love all wildlife, and osprey are amazing fishermen, as you know. So I have had the opportunity to photograph ospreys throughout the western United States, Baja, California, primarily.
Very good. And Jackie here again, Jackie Porter. What is the longest that you've had to wait to catch the perfect shot? And by the way, before I said I have to think of a picture I saw with your son sort of in the water with, underneath sort of one of these tents, these camouflages, quite remarkable. So I'm just, that just reminds me of the question. But anyway, so comment, please.
Right. Yeah. So blind hides, as they call them in Europe, where we hide to spy on our wildlife subjects, kind of paparazzis of their world. So I've spent a lot of time in blinds, and when you're working near a nest, you've got to be really cognizant of that. So one nest, I set my blind up about 2 a.m. in the dark. I didn't want to bother the eagles. And then I stayed in the nest or in the blind at the nest site for 2 days, because once I had everything set up, I didn't want to get in and out or anything. So I actually lived in my blind for about 2 days to get some of those nesting shots that are looking down into the nest. Kind of like a similar view to Christian showed from the beginning of his show up there in the Aleutian Islands. You can see they nest on the cliff. And so I was able to get above and a view down into the nest to see the chicks. So that would be my longest stay in my blind. And my blind, my terrestrial blind, I call it, it's about 5 feet tall. And the base of it is a square that measures about 4 feet by 4 feet. And then it tapers towards the top. So at night when I slept, my feet were sticking out. It wasn't real comfortable. I had my little chair cushion in there that I open up into a bed, if you could call it that. So that'd be my world record waiting in the blind.
Oh my goodness, that's it. That's incredible. So Carrie comes up with a quick Carrie Miller. Well, I know all the names here. Jeff, do you participate in active conservation? And conservation is, by the way, I can tell you that's very important for Jeff. If you read the first pages, he talks about conservation of BAEA success in any particular group or agency. Of course, I consider your teaching to be a conservation effort in itself, but I meant other.
So let's clarify that question a little bit more. So what conservation groups do I?
Yeah, are you participating in any active conservation? Conservation of, I think, BAEA. I don't know the abbreviation of that, but it's probably related to the bald eagle, I assume, or any particular group that are you in any conservation group?
Yes, I think the answer to that, I'm thinking I'm understanding that question, is my conservation group is more in educational settings where I'll go and I'll speak to like Audubon groups and Sierra Club groups, and do pretty slideshows that are beautiful and yet educational, to share the conservation stories that I take to heart. I think that's maybe what I can answer on that one. I'm not quite sure. If there's more detail, please help me out with that question.
Now here comes Maxine Wirth with a really curious question. I would have never even dreamt of this question, but actually a very interesting one. Do you know the species of eagle that is found many times in the Bible? Any clue?
I do not. That is an interesting question, and one I had never thought of or heard of before. So if the Bible stories they're referring to, took place around the Jerusalem areas and back there, then my guess is it wouldn't be the bald eagle, because that's, today it's North American, and I could assume that it was then, but I don't know for sure. There are a number of eagle species around the world that are different than the bald eagle, and Africa, Japan, Asia, Europe have some of their own eagles. I'm not an expert on that neck of the woods. I did talk about a couple species in my book that I got to photograph while I was in Japan. And so that's a great, interesting question. Yeah. Sorry, I don't have a better answer.
But I think it's a great question to actually look it up. I really don't have an idea, but it's quite interesting, that recording, at least from a biologist's point of view, because it does tell us something maybe about the evolution of and the migration of eagles, right? So it's,
for sure, yeah, that's a good topic maybe for one of your shows, Christian.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Maxime. Never even dreamt of such a question, but it's good. Number 10, Dolores. Oh my goodness, I can hardly pronounce this whole Dolores Porchicat. I hope I got that one right. Hi, can you tell me if you watch any of the live raptor cams? That's a good one.
I have watched some of the raptor cams. I have a friend here, Christian Min Kit, and her friend Terry are quite involved with a local pair of eagles here in Northern California. The eagle pair is not using the nest with the camera in it this year for them, but I've watched theirs. I've also watched a number of others while I was doing some research for the book. So I do like to research some of my resources, as well as some of my photo ideas for future use through some of the, and again, a lot of those I consider citizen science, which are really neat for me, where a lot of citizens are involved helping share that knowledge, and then watching those cameras and being able to share what they see at all hours of the day and night with biologists and other citizens that are interested in it.
Jeff, I'm going to throw a question in here because I'm just showing page 10 here, and you have a very iconic picture here of the eagle lady in Haines. Tell us about this encounter. I've always heard about her, and I was excited when you actually showed this, and now I know somebody who actually has seen or even spoken to her. Can you tell us a little bit about that encounter? Thank you.
Yeah, I was just looking at that picture to make sure. Gene Keane lived on the spit, at the end of the spit, out into Ketchimek Bay in Homer, Alaska for many years. She's a really interesting story and a wonderful person. She drove her RV from her home state, I think it was Minnesota, up to Alaska, and ended up in Homer and never left, and lived there for many years feeding eagles on the end of the spit to help them through the winter. And she would get like fishermen leftovers and things and would feed the eagles. And then it became quite a tourist activity for people to come. She'd have 200-300 eagles, and you can see that picture you're showing in the background. So it was quite a phenomenon. I spent a number of seasons visiting and photographing in Gene's yard and becoming a friend of Gene's. And then she passed away in the 2000s, so she hasn't been able to carry that on. And the city, soon after she passed away, made an ordinance that people can't feed eagles in the city limits anymore. It was something that was grandfathered in for Gene, but just a neat person who just loved eagles. She traveled around the world sharing her story of eagles and learning. I've got another cool story in the book where they picked up an eagle that was injured. Its lower mandible had been damaged, and she was feeding, the eagles, and noticed this young eagle with a broken lower beak, and called the Fish and Game authorities there in Alaska and a veterinarian. They came out and caught it, and the veterinarian repaired it with a little metal piece right here, and they attached it on, and then they re-released the eagle after it had healed in Gene's yard. And the bird, which was easy to identify because, and you'll see the pictures in the book, it's got this metal plate screwed on the side of it. And so the next year I went back, and sure enough, there was the bird again. It survived, and it was able to feed. Of course, they couldn't feed without that lower mandible, and when they repaired it, it was able to keep biting and feeding and survived. And we saw it the next year. It's a pretty cool story.
Well, that's remarkable. I'm glad you talked a bit about that. I mean, David Hancock has told me about her, but not in such detail. So this is great. By the way,
Yeah.
Dana, yeah. By the way, Dana Steele says, "Love that photo of the ice tree and eagles." What she's referring to is just as we scan through the book, you have these beautiful pictures, probably from Haynes, I assume. So that's just a comment. So question number 11, Terry Green. Hi, Terry. What is the most surprising eagle behavior you have witnessed and documented?
I think one of my favorite things, I've only really seen it once, and I was able to photograph it, and that was an eagle. And I was in Homer, in Gene's yard, actually, and out in the distance, the bird flew down into the bay, assuming to catch a fish, and it never came up. It never flew back out of the water with a fish. And it was just sitting in the water, and I noticed it at a distance. And so I pointed my camera with my telephoto lens out there to watch it, see what the heck was going on. And after a few seconds, the bird started to do this perfect butterfly stroke with its wings coming up over its head, like Michael Phelps, Olympic swimmer. And it started to swim back with its wings, doing this butterfly out of the water and then back towards the shoreline, which was where we were. And it swam, I'd guess, at least a quarter mile. It walked out finally onto the beach right below that picture you're showing. Actually, it was right pretty much down in front there. And it got onto the beach. And from my human perspective, it looked exhausted and it was soaking wet. And it just was standing there on the sand. Poor thing, And so I kept watching it, kept filming it. And then after a couple minutes, it shook, much like, a dog does or any bird does after it's been in the water, and shook a couple times and just sat there. And it just looked like it was trying to get its energy back. And about 30 minutes after that, it got up and flew away. And I really enjoyed that encounter. And I've never seen one swim since.
That's a wonderful story. Now, Osprey Mama says, Christian, tell Jeff, since he likes ospreys too, I will buy his book. Well, aren't you lucky? Okay, that's a comment. So she's going to buy your book.
Thank goodness I said that.
So you have one sale already. I think you deserve a lot more. Really, I can only say time and again. Now, this is a marvelous book. By the way, the preface is written by David Hancock. It's quite incredible. And of course, David Hancock and Jeff have known each other for much longer than I have even been to Canada, so I just had to comment on that. So
yeah, and David Hancock, I'm hoping your listeners know of him, but he's one of the eagle biologists extraordinaires that is quite storied in the eagle comeback and eagle knowledge, and I was quite honored that his beginning of my book is just marvelous, and I really appreciate everything he had to say, and I'm honored by his words because he truly is a bald eagle icon and a big part of the knowledge base and the comeback story of bald eagles. And of course, David being from Canada, where the eagle's never been endangered, he still was quite involved in helping the eagle come back and the story of the bald eagle.
Well, that's very, very nice to see your long friendship with David Hancock. So I'm going to jump to the next one here, question number 13. Let me see if I get the sequence right. Yes, from Sherry Matthias. I hope I pronounced your surname correctly. If I didn't, excuse that. Question for Jeff. Have you ever been in a position where you saw an injured eagle and physically helped them?
Wow, your people are asking great questions, so thank you all so much. I had I've been working on the book for quite a while, and I met this gentleman who was a rehabilitator of raptors and focused on bald eagles. So I said, I'd really like to, tell your story. Remember, my book is all these stories, and I try to do the good news stories. Of course, the bad news stories of the Eagles' decline had to be in there, but I wanted to focus on the good news stories and all the people involved in them, because it truly does take, a village to help these wildlife populations come back. And I said, I'd love to accompany you out in the field. So he said, oh, okay, I will keep that in mind. So I'm just going along with life one day, and I get this call about 5 p.m. and it was summer, and he's Jeff, I've got a report of an injured eagle out at the lake. Meet me at the boat ramp. So it's like, okay, drop everything, and here's my opportunity. And we drove out, and this fisherman had spotted this injured eagle. So he left it there on the side of the lake, came back, called the authorities. We met him at the dock. He put us in his boat, and there was another person that was helping the rehabilitator. And we got in the boat and headed over to the shoreline where the eagle was, and it looked like it had an injured wing. And so we got up to the shoreline, and the rehabilitator, and I'm basically not really helping it, but I'm filming it, and I'm there if anything needs to be. But these two guys were quite expert at it, and they caught the eagle quite easily and without much fanfare. And then we brought it back onto the fisherman's boat and headed back to the dock, and he had it in a kind of looks like a pet carrier. They kind of carry their eagles and injured birds in like a big case. It's a pet carrier. And then when we got to the dock, and there's some pictures in this stories in my book, they put some fluids in and doing some rehydration work right away. And then they got the bird back to their facility and rehabbed the bird back to the ability to release it back to the wild. And it was an adult bird. And then after it was all ready to be released back into the wild, they took it back up to the lake and released it where they had found it. So they didn't, I never found an after story of that bird, but that was the one that I didn't really help, but I got to tell the story.
Very nice story. Very nice story. Of course, I can say myself, I have accompanied David Hancock on several rescue missions from eagles. I have held juveniles myself and so on. So yeah, it was only due to David Hancock where I've been quite involved. So I know exactly what this question is about. Okay, so
let me just add something, if I could, Christian.
Yeah, go ahead.
If anyone finds, an injured raptor or a bald eagle in particular, you need to call the proper authorities, because these experts, like you were mentioning, David, they're licensed to take care of these things, and they know how to do it right. And I don't recommend anyone, even me, I'm not going to go out there and pick something up like a bald eagle thinking that I can rehabilitate it and keep it healthy and alive. We've got to call the proper authorities. Most areas have a rehabilitation station or a fish and game office that knows, or a veterinarian office that knows how to do this. And this is a good message and a good question, and we need to allow those people to take care of those situations. Definitely.
And I completely agree. I mean, that's a very good point. So what is very difficult with an eagle, I can tell you that it looks incredibly simple, but it is not. Is how to grab an eagle so you don't injure it or you don't get injured is very difficult. It really is there, and it's not intuitive. It's not. I can tell you that. I won't go into detail, but I've watched David Hancock many times, and I thought, oh my goodness. This very simple movement that it looks so simple is actually really difficult. It is, because you have to be incredibly careful. So, yeah, let's go on with a question. Susan North, this is a good question from Susan again. How many years, and I think this is something you address in your book, Jeff, how many years have the bald eagles been on the endangered species list?
Yeah. So again, in the United States, that's the endangered species list that we're talking about, because they've never been endangered in Canada or Alaska, for that matter, or Hawaii, because they've never occurred there. But the lower 48, the Endangered Species Act went into effect in 1973. So that's kind of when it started. And before that, a decade or so, we had some laws for bald eagles, bald eagle protection laws, bald and golden eagles from North America. So, and there was a endangered species law that we started in the 60s as well that didn't quite have the teeth of the 1973 law that went into effect. But anyway, the eagle went on the endangered species list shortly after the official act went in 1973. And then so 73, 1983, 1993, 2003. So 34 years on the endangered species list. And in 2007, they were removed from the Endangered Species Act and are no longer endangered. And that's a big part of that good news story of how, conservation and scientists and citizen scientists have the ability to help these animals get off the endangered species list, and the eagle's one of those really good stories.
Very good. And next question here is, let me just say, oh no, this is a comment. Kathy Harter says, Jeff, you have some amazing photos. Well, I completely agree, Kathy. That is absolutely right. And Glenn Hazelwoody says, thank you, Jeff, for the story about the eagle lady. I knew a lot of listeners would love this story. Then we go on to question number 14 from Nicole. Here's Nicole, great helper here. How many books have you written, and what are each of them named? Are you working on any other books? Curiosity. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I'll back up. Thank you for the nice words about my photography, and I really, I'll get to that question. I might have to ask you to restate it, but I'll try to remember. But just back to the eagle lady, and again, all these other people that are so involved in nature and wildlife and caring for them, and giving me the ability and the opportunity to tell those stories. That's really, I'm a photojournalist in that sense. And the eagle lady, her story is quite special, and so I really appreciate having the opportunity to tell it. And David Hancock's story, and there are just so many more. So thank you for those nice comments.
I have the question.
Third.
Yeah, your book.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it was about your book.
Yep.
What have you written, and also what are you working on? Curiosity.
Exactly. Yeah, thanks. So my first book was Baby Birds. All three of them are still available on my website. Baby Birds was my first book I did, and then my second book I have is The Complete Guide to Bird Photography. So I wanted to write after, doing bird photography, wildlife photography, and specializing in birds, because that's kind of my wildlife degree major, emphasizes birds. So that's pretty much, if I'm a specialist in wildlife photography, it'd be birds. And so I wanted to help teach and share some of my tricks and techniques for photographing and filming birds. And then the third book is this newest one, The Bald Eagles, which again is another passion bird of mine in this case. I've written a wolf book that I don't have published yet, so that's a current project I've kind of been working on. And then I don't have a book project in the works right now, but I'm working on a few things. I continue to have ideas and thoughts and work with publishers. I do a lot of writing also for some magazines, and I have a big project I've been working for a couple years, and I need to get back to it because this Bald Eagle book has been pretty much all-consuming for the last year or so. And that project that I'm working on for our California State Fish and Game, the magazine is called Outdoor California, and it's a project on California state symbols. So like the state bird and the state flower and the state amphibian and the state tree and the state everything nature related, I've been working on that. And current photography includes the state reptile, which is our desert tortoise. And so I've done a number of trips down to the desert working on that story and interviewing the people involved with that wonderful story. The state amphibian came out not too long ago, and the state fossil was down at the really neat museum, the La Brea Tar Pits in Los Angeles, where the state mammal fossil is found and housed down there. So I really enjoy telling stories like that, and those are kind of some of the projects I'm working on at the moment.
Very good. And the next question then comes in from Maxine Wirth. Before I say, Maxine Wirth, I just wanted to thank you very much for your kind donation. I really appreciate that. You are very generous. The same goes for Dana Steele. Thank you very much. And Osprey Mama again. And also Lady Hawk, thank you very much for your donations. That will help in my upcoming Ecuador trip, which is going to be absolutely exciting. I'm going there. Sorry, I just have to throw this in. With a slow motion camera, I'm going to be one of the first people who are going to look at the wide variety of hummingbirds from close up in slow motion. Hasn't surprisingly been done before. So anyway, I just had to throw that in. So thank you for the kind donations. I really appreciate that. Okay, so Maxine Wirth's question is your book listed on Amazon, Jeff?
Yes, it is. And it's also listed on my website. You can buy them on my website, and I'll sign them if you're interested in that. Christian showed that link there. It's got a PayPal thing. You can also email me if you want to send a check or something like that. If you rather do Amazon, it is on Amazon. It will be in bookstores around the country as well. It's just come out. I'm giving Christian the first interview, so this is just kind of a brand new release and one of our first interviews the first interview for this book. So I wanted Christian to have that opportunity.
Well, thank you. That is an incredible honor. That is really wonderful. So, oh yes, here's Wobbies. Wobbies again. Jeff, for all the years that you have been photographing eagles, have the eagle nest cams been a great help to you and your observation? Great question. Do you work with these?
I think the great help they've been for me is more in the natural history things that we've learned from them. And once they're in place, in the nest, and the viewers of those nests, which are often citizen scientists, and then they share that information, that natural history. So I think learning the natural history information from the eagle cams has been really the most helpful for me. And then getting to know some of the people that are so passionate about it. And I mentioned my friends Kit and Terry here in Redding that have the eagle nest and the eagle pair, and just to be part of their group and what they do, and the passion that people share about wildlife and nature really gives me hope, because this earth is pretty precious, and the things that live on it are extremely important to me. And so it's nice to have those cameras, because I really think that they help other people enjoy it as well, and maybe not have to leave their house, but maybe it'll help them get motivated to leave their house to see some of these wonderful things in nature.
Well, Jeff, it's wonderful that you have this incredible passion for wildlife. And that brings me to question number 17 from Jackie Porter. Any advice for us backyard birders on photography?
I would say that learn how to use your camera and get good at using your camera. And once you have that figured out, then start photographing birds, doing research on what makes good bird photos and how to get good bird photos. And in the backyard, for me, I will have a bird feeder set up, and I'll find a really nice looking and attractive perch that the bird hopefully will come to before they come down to the feeder. Often put the perch maybe a little bit higher above the food, and then be ready to film that and really pay attention to all aspects. Photography means painting with light, in my definition. Photo and graphy is painting, and photo is light. And so you want the good light. You want to, shoot in early light and later in the daylight. And when you're in your backyard, you can control it like a studio. Watch your background. Make sure you have a really pretty, clean background, not a bunch of messy stuff in it. I call it messy. So I'll use a telephoto lens that helps that perspective. And then I'll make sure that my perch and my feeding station is quite a distance from the background, so it blurs into a blend of green or color or whatever I want the background color to be. And it then therefore makes the bird stand out more in a portrait backyard kind of setting. And so when I'm out in the wild, I try for the same things. Like the picture Christian has up now, I like, in this case, the eagles were down along the creek, the river. And so I got down as low as I could for that perspective. And you can see the background there really shows blurry. And so it helps the bird stand out better. And you can do that anywhere you are. And so I'm looking for those kinds of situations and settings. And then with the light and the focus and the composition. And that's all after you've understood how that camera works. So you just start practicing using a camera and reading or whatever it takes to go on a trip. Buy my book.
Absolutely, buy your book. I completely agree. I completely agree, and I think there'll be quite a few people here, or viewers. I shouldn't say people, but a lot of these passionate participants here on the show who would love to buy your book. And it's as you can see, this is Haines. I can see that pictures from Haines. I've only been once in Haines, but I recognize some of these surroundings. I think you've got some from Harrison Mills, where we actually were together recently, Jeff. So
yeah, that picture on the right.
I recognize it.
Standing right next to me doing a podcast.
Yes.
One on the left. Like you said, it is the Chilkat River in Haines.
Yeah.
And just another plug for myself. I'm sorry, Christian, but my Complete Guide to Bird Photography book has sold out, and so we're in the process right now of making the second edition. So it is successful, and you can learn some good tips. So just another plug there. Kind of cool to have a book sell out and have the publisher want to do a second edition. So we've been working on that, and some of my Ecuador pictures I took last month. And a lot of hummingbirds, like you're going to be doing, also in that book too.
Wonderful. And here's another one from Osprey Mama. She's really at your neck here. What has been the most amazing thing you've witnessed an eagle eat or bring to the nest? And I just want to add on to that question because, Jeff, you told me something interesting. I remember when we met, and I was quite I was quite amazed when you said that, because she's talking here about the specific food they bring to the nest or eat. You told me that in California, they have different habits. It's not salmon, but they eat different things. So maybe you can comment on that.
Sure. And as far as watching them bring things into the nest, I think probably to answer that part of the question, what looks to be garbage and, rotten, dead stuff. They are carnivores or scavengers, excuse me, but also carnivores. And I was hoping, I had this great idea of a eagle flying into the nest carrying a giant fish. And the 2 days in that one blind I spent there, I never saw that, but I saw gross-looking dead stuff that was, scavenged from somewhere. So it was not a real pretty picture. But as far as the habits and feeding, eagles are scavengers. They do go to dumps. They do go places where there's ample, easy to get food. And that kind of thing in and around areas where there's open dumps, like Alaska still has a lot of those. They do really like fish. That is probably one of their most common foods across the board in averages. And one thing you find out is everything is an average, and every eagle is slightly different in some way. It's really unique in how unique these individuals can be. But in Northern California in the winter, they gather around places in the winter where there's ample food. And so salmon runs in the fall. In the summer, there's ample food in salmon runs too. And in Northern California in the winter, they come to the Klamath Basin to feed on the waterfowl. And so the Klamath Basin right on the Oregon border is a waterfowl haven. And thousands and thousands and thousands of ducks, geese, swans come there to spend the winter and feed and fly through on their migration north in the spring and south in the fall. and the eagles go there and eat waterfowl. And so they'll eat dead ducks, scavenge dead birds. They'll also catch them. So I've watched them catch and carry a coot back into their nest, or not their nest, into their feeding spot where they rip them apart and feathers flying everywhere. Those kinds of things are fun to watch.
Yeah, very good. A very interesting answer about about the waterfall fowl. Sorry. Here's a question from Terry Green. Jeff, I'm embarrassed to ask, but what is our state bird, meaning California?
California state bird is the California quail. Used to be called the valley quail. It's the California quail, and that is our state bird in California.
Wow, I learned something too. Interesting. Thank you. Question number 20 from Aunt Red 19. Maybe a dumb question, but I would like to know, what age were you when you found your love to bald eagles? Not a dumb question at all.
No, not at all. Yeah, bald eagles in particular, like I said earlier, I never saw an eagle my first 22 years of life, in spite of all the time I had spent outdoors in Northern California primarily. Never saw one. So I didn't really even know they existed. And then I was on a school field trip with my ornithology class from Humboldt State, and we went up to the Klamath Basin area. And we were trying to see how many birds we could find, all kinds of birds. It was just an ornithology trip. And we were counting and keeping track and writing them all down. And there was this giant bird flying off in the distance. And I put my binoculars up across the way. It was probably a quarter mile away. And through my binoculars, I could see this giant white head and white tail and these huge wings sticking out. And that was my first eagle I ever saw in the wild. And that pretty much was one of those things where you say, man, bald eagles are so graceful and iconic and beautiful. And it just hit me right then. And then that started it all. And then with my photography passion, starting at about the same time in the early to mid 80s, that just kind of was something I started to work on, is filming bald eagles.
Very nice. And now comes Jenny Bob. She's also here, a part of my team, which is great. So she asks, what is your favorite camera brand? Now you better say Nikon, okay? No, I'm only joking. Can you recommend a camera for beginners? No, I'm really not partial to that. So please comment on that.
Christian and I both know that in photography world, we like to tease each other photographer-wise on which camera brand they have. And of course, the camera brand is not nearly as important as all the other aspects of learning how to use one and finding and capturing great wildlife photos. But most people that are really serious are choosing Canon or Nikon. And I have a Nikon. I've been using Nikon. And I picked Nikon back in the 80s because one of my best friends had some Nikon gear, and we were able to share it, and I was able to borrow some of his lenses. So I recommend, if you know somebody that's, interested in that line of photography that might be willing to loan you a lens that'll fit on a camera, that would be a good place to start. Cameras are really good quality today. And the answer is, it depends on what you really want to do with your pictures. And you can spend $6,000 to $7,000 or more on a top-of-the-line camera, which Christian and I have because of what we like to do with our pictures. But an iPhone and a cell phone camera, you can take wonderful pictures, and pictures that can, blow up to 8x10 and be gorgeous. So it all depends on how you want to use them. If you want to put them on Facebook and on your computer, those qualities are good. And then I like to recommend brands that have a lot of accessories. So the top brands have, you can buy all different sizes of lenses and accessories and flashes and little various tools and techniques that go with them. So my camera is the Nikon D5, and a recommendation for a new person would be really tough for me unless we, sat down and answered some of those questions I was just referring to on what your use is and what you want to photograph. Sorry.
I think you're completely correct. It's again a very specific question. Well, Susan North here again, and that's a good question because I think I saw the answer in your book. How did the bald eagle get chosen to be our national bird?
That's a great story. Thanks for asking that one. The founding fathers, like me, saw bald eagles, and they were common back in the 1700s still. And just what a gorgeous, graceful, giant, top of the food chain. We're starting this new country. We're trying to get away from the king and queen and do everything our own way, and we need to be strong, and we need to be brave, and we need to be tough, and all these things that they founding fathers thought the bald eagle represented because of it being at the top of the food chain and being such a gorgeous bird. But there was quite a discussion, and Christian's got the page up there. One of the founding fathers was not a fan of our country having a symbol of a bird that's a scavenger and a pirate and steals food from others. And that's just not what we need to, go back up a little bit. Yep, right there. That's not what we need our country to be represented by. And so Benjamin Franklin was this amazing founding father, and he thought a better symbol for our country that would represent us and our new endeavors were the wild turkey. And that's that picture Christian had up there a minute ago. And the wild turkey, he said, was so wise and so smart and so weary. That's what we need. And of course, being a new country, and we're going to be a democracy, so they voted, and Ben lost, and the democracy won out and chose the bald eagle, officially selected by the founding fathers in 1782. So it's been our symbol since pretty much day one.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. That is a great answer. Let's go on now. Oh yeah, man, this is a really interesting, crazy question. Where was it? I just saw it. Glenn Hazelwoody, how many eagles can fit in a tree? And what is it? And what is it called when many eagles are in one tree? Well, that's a treagle. I can tell you that. So I got that answer. So
thanks for helping me out with that one, Christian.
It's called a treagle. Many eagles in a tree is a treagle. Yeah, okay,
I love it.
That's just my spontaneous invention here.
So that's good stuff. Right? I got to keep it light, right?
So how many eagles fit in a tree?
A treagle. How big is the tree? And to be serious, in the wintertime when it's cold, they roost, and they have colonial roosting sites. So they will prefer to go to a forest that's protected with a lot of trees, and on a side of a mountain or something where they're not going to be disturbed. And there's some big ones around. There's one in Northern California with over 500 eagles that'll roost every single night for months. And first thing in the morning, before it's daylight for us, they're flying out to go feed. When I was up in Canada in November with David and Christian, there was a roosting site up there along that river system, and David was saying there's over 1,000, 2,000 birds roosting. Now they won't necessarily be in one tree, but they're in one general location. And of course, it depends on, the size of the tree. That one picture Christian showed a little while ago that I'd taken up there in November had, quite a few eagles in it. And that was like a snag. But, there were even more eagles in that. And I think Christian is, right there on the right. I think Christian's seen that tree with probably even more eagles than that in it because he lives right up in there. But I don't know the answer. And I haven't counted those in that picture either. So
okay, very good. Let's see where we are now. Oh my goodness, here we go. Dana Steele says, Jeff, you have touched my heart 3 times now. I thought it was hard to get me twice, but you've done it 3 times. Thank you. That's quite a compliment.
That's quite a compliment.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Osprey Baba says, Christian, tell Jeff how Harriet got a big snake bird and struggled with it getting up to the nest. Oh, that's a story. Okay. Well, I won't tell the story here, but yes, that is one of the stories. I don't know if you know that, but these are very specific stories. This is in Southwest Florida. Okay, next question, because we have to get a move on, because I also want to give, or Jeff wants to give a book away. So Gentleman Ghost is here from New York. Hi, Gentleman Ghost. Has David ever had conflicts with park territory? So he probably means Jeff. Has Jeff ever had conflict with park territory state rangers? Did he get permits to do all his pictures? That's a great question.
It is a great question. And being an endangered species, it's not on the endangered species list anymore. It still is protected under the Bald Eagle Protection Act in the lower 48 states. So, we have to be very conscientious and ethical when we're photographing all wildlife. Bald eagles are no different. And when it comes to a nesting eagle, I did work with biologists to get into position with my blind to do it right, and did have permission, and I highly recommend that that's the way one goes about it.
By the way, I just saw my friend Hal Sherman here, Hal, who's really also a great photographer, and he just said the brand of the camera is not what is important, it is you. And I completely agree. I mean, he is the one who can, I think Jeff would also agree on that. So thanks, Hal, for that comment. I just saw that earlier. I didn't want to forget that. So let's see.
Yeah, and one of my favorite stories on that one is, people would say, man, that's a great picture, Christian. You must have a great camera. And, people don't ask somebody like Rembrandt, wow, you must have a great paintbrush. Or, somebody that writes stories, you have a great pen or a typewriter. You know what I mean? Photography is a little different, but yes, it is the camera. You have to know how to use it, and then it is the camera person.
And this is exactly the question. The next one, 24, that's from Wobbies. Hi, Wobbies. Jeff, all photographers want their subject as close as possible. What is the average yardage or distance of most of your photographs?
Well, you can see what Christian's showing there. The one on the left, I'm probably 30 to 40 yards. The one on the right, we were quite a ways away. I shot the one on the left with a 500, and the one with all the birds in the snag there, I was using a 200 millimeter lens. So we were on a boat at that time, and I would say we were maybe 100, 200 yards away, you think, Christian? 100 meters away from that?
Well, that's easy, and sometimes the distance is even larger. I completely agree. That's why unfortunately you very often need very good high quality telephoto lenses. I think that's my summary. So
and if you wouldn't mind, Christian, go into that one you just showed. It had the blue sky and the mountain and the eagle flying.
Yep.
And this kind of helps answer the question. So there's a picture for you where I don't always want to be as close as I can. So I do like to get close portraits. I do enjoy that. I like to get action, like I mentioned earlier. Behavior is my favorite. But I also love to take, and this is an example of it, a wildlife scenic. So it's a pretty picture on its own right, and then you put a wildlife individual in there or group, and now it's really a cool story that photograph that tells a neat story, and I call those my wildlife scenic. So I actually photographed this with a wide-angle lens up in Alaska, and the bird was flying right over the top of me. So I do like to take pictures with wide angle all the way up to super, telephoto, my 500, and I like to be well-rounded and try to tell stories. So I try not to always get really close, but I do that as well.
Very good. And Proud Cat Mama asks, and I remember reading this in your book too, because you were talking about the largest nest. Is it true or false that bald eagles hold the record for the largest bird nest?
According to the Guinness Book of World Records, which is the authority on all things world record, the bald eagle nest in Florida in the 1960s was like 3 meters wide, like 9-10 feet wide, and 6 meters deep. And it weighed, when it fell down in, I think, 1963 or something, they weighed it, and it weighed over 2 tons. And if you can imagine that a bald eagle, builds its nest And the same pair will often use the same nest year after year after year. And every year, part of their courtship is involved with bringing new sticks to the nest. So you can imagine a nest that big and with that many sticks in it that weighs 2 tons, and how long it probably took them over the years to build that nest. And probably the same 2 eagles built a lot of it together year after year after year. So according to the Guinness Book of World Record, and I've never found another record of any bird nest bigger than that. It's actually the largest bird nest in the world, not just bald eagles. But that's what the Guinness Book of World Records says. So I'm going with that.
Very good. And here's a comment, of course. A group of eagles is called a convocation. What? You don't like my treagle? Anyway, okay, so question number 26. Belladonna, the wonderful Belladonna, who's also helping all the time. Do you ever shoot video, Jeff? Good question.
A great question. I'm shooting more and more video nowadays. It's built right into our cameras, and wildlife really lends itself to video. So yes, I am shooting more and more of that.
Good. And let's bring it to an end now, because I think we've this is marvelous. I would like to thank you for all the questions, but what we're going to do now is the fun part of a quiz. So I think let's just do one question today, because it's all about Jeff and Jeff's book. So Jeff has said he's going to give away one free book. This is your big chance. One free book, and it's going to be signed by him. What a marvelous gift. Thank you, Jeff, for doing that. And so we're going to get to the question. Jeff, have you thought of a question? Hang on, before I do that, I'm going to just put in the dial number, which of course is blinking again, and I have no idea why it's always doing that. One second, I'm going to try and get rid of this now. It really is irritating. It must be it's a nervous blink. Okay, but anyway, let me give you the dial-in number. I'm just going to switch my audio so we have the possibility to accept calls now. So sorry about that. The dial-in number is again 425-223-4960. Try and do it again. No, it's not stabilizing. 425-223-4960. 425-223-4960. So Jeff, I'm going to ask you now, I'm going to put this nervous question away, this nervous blinking away. You see, that worked. So, no, that doesn't work. It's funny. Okay. Well, anyway, Jeff, go ahead with your question, and then we're going to accept calls.
Oh, I have to ask the question?
Of course, you have to ask a question. You are the generous person.
Okay. And it's coming from our conversation this evening. So my question is, Ben Franklin was not happy wanting the bald eagle as our national symbol and national bird. What bird did Ben Franklin think was a better representation for America's United States?
Okay, and please do not put the answer in the chat. I know many of you know the answer, but don't be smart and put it in there. Leave it to, please don't put the answer in the chat. Give it, just give it a try and dial. I think this is an easy giveaway.
It's supposed to be, right? Easy.
Okay, so, I'm going to wait for your calls now. So go ahead. By the way, Jeff, you won't be able to hear the other person when they talk. Okay. So I will, that I have never figured out to do, but anyway, I will let you know what they say and so on. So just keep, so please, oh, here we go. They're dialing in now. So 1 second.
Okay.
Hello?
Oh, hello, Dr. Sassy.
Hello, with whom am I speaking, please?
Oh, your friend from Pittsburgh, Glenn Hazel Woody.
Glenn Hazel Woody again from Pittsburgh. She was the one who who put all the questions of Pittsburgh about the Hayes nest and so on. Oh, I know you very well.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you for dialing in again. So now comes the question: what was Benjamin Franklin's big, what did he have against the bald eagle, and what bird did he actually like? Do you know?
He wanted his beloved turkey.
He wanted his beloved turkey. I'm looking at Jeff's face. Is that correct or not? Would you? Yes, he's putting thumbs up for you. You've won it. You've
Good
won
job.
it. Good job, he says. Good job. So you've done it.
Thank you, sir.
That's great. Okay, very good. So, I'm just telling this to Kevin. So we won't accept any further calls because we're running a bit tight on time, and I think this is all about Jeff's. So yes. Glenn Hazelwoody, you have won an Eagle book. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's going to be personally signed by your Californian friend here, Jeff Rich. So congratulations
thank you.
With that. Fine, and thanks for taking part in it. And good night. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll send my email in.
You'll
Thank
send
you,
your
sir.
email. That's right. We'll do that. Thank you. We'll get the details. Thank you so much.
All
Fine.
right.
Okay, thank you, Fine.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, so that was Glenn Hazelwoody. Thank you so much, Glenn, for that. So we're going to pass on the details. Yeah, I'm going to take no more calls because I'm going to decline the calls because that's all we're going to do and all we have time for tonight, unfortunately. But the phones are off now. Kevin has told me the phones are off. Thanks, Kevin, for doing that. I know it's not easy. Oops. Hang on. We've got what happened? I've lost. Hang on. One second. I'm just going to switch my audio back now. Okay. Sorry, I've just lost. I've just lost contact to. I don't know what happened there, but for some reason, I have lost contact with Jeff. Sorry about that. I'm just going to. Oh gosh, the phones are still coming in. I don't know what's going on. Kevin, maybe you could just check. For some reason, the queue is not. Maybe I'm doing this a bit out of order. That's why. Okay, so don't dial in again, please. Just keep it. Okay, so 1 second. I'm just going to blend in the background quickly whilst the phone keeps on ringing. I just wanted to see if I can find the other photos. Let me just do this quickly. If I can't, I wanted to show something from Nicole, but I probably can't do it now. So don't worry. Let's just, let's just keep it the way it is now. So I wanted to thank you all, and I wanted to thank Jeff. Thank you so much for dialing in and being part of this tonight. And it's been a marvelous show. And do buy Jeff's book. Okay, so they've put the message in the chat. Okay, so you have the link in the chat. And oops, I don't know why the phone just keeps on ringing. It's just I'm going to switch off my phone now. Sorry about that. Okay, I don't know. It just goes on. Kevin, we've got a bit of a problem here. We've got a very persistent caller. Won't give up. I can't deal with this anyway. Okay, I'm going to try and get rid of my phone here. Anyway, it's funny. It doesn't work. It's just too funny. Okay, never mind. Thanks for dialing in, and we'll see you next Friday. And thank you for all the generous donations. There have been so plenty today. I really appreciate that. So next Friday we have one more live show. Then I'm off to Ecuador. So don't, for all the Patreon people, please go onto my Periscope. Go on to Periscope. And so that I can give you the, for all of those who've donated and so on, I'll add you, and thank you very much. I'll be showing you something of hummingbirds in Ecuador and many other things. So thanks so much for participating. The phone is just keeping on ringing all the time. So I'll stop stop it now, and wish you a wonderful weekend. And thanks for joining, and all your great questions. Okay, so it just keeps on. Anyway, thanks, and have a lovely weekend, my friends, and see you soon again.